The year was 1983. In that year, the video game industry crashed and nearly killed off video games as we know them. But in that same year, a company that was predominantly known for making playing cards since 1889 created a console that single-handedly saved video games from extinction. Coming off its success with its line of Game & Watch handheld games, it created the family computer, or Famicom for short. It would later reach our shores as the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the rest, as they say, is history. For many of us, it was the console that started our love of video games, and it's here where we'll remember that iconic gray box coming up on this episode of Downloadable Content. Welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with me on this episode we have Ron.
Hey everyone.
And the resident Nintendo fanboy, Doug.
Oh jeez, no pressure or anything.
Yeah, no pressure. Well, I seem to notice that the episodes you've been on, Doug, have been when Nintendo has been the focus.
Yeah. Sometime we'll find to talk about something now. Well, why break tradition?
Yeah. One of these days, you'll come on You'll come on for an episode just completely out of the blue, like, holy shit, this is an Xbox episode. What the hell is Doug doing on this? But yes, that is what we're going to be talking about on this episode: the Nintendo Entertainment System, which for many of us in our late 20s, early 30s, it was the system we started with. It was the system we cut our teeth on and got involved with video games and are still playing video games today.
Yep.
It's how it is, and we're in a bit of a nice area right now where a lot of games are reaching milestone anniversaries. Games we know and love, games we cut our teeth on: Mario, Final Fantasy, Zelda, Dragon Quest. A lot of big names that are hitting their milestones and still going on today. And For many of us, myself, a personal note, my parents thought that, I would grow out of video games, but I haven't.
Yes, giving a 4 or 5-year-old this thing that lets them play with colorful blocks on a screen or jump around without actually having to jump, that doesn't sound like something that would be loads of fun, and something that would probably carry them for a large part of their life.
Yes, it's and all of the things we remember growing up. I mean, obviously, all the wonderful peripherals that came with it: the zapper, the trackpad, Rob.
Oh,
there's another one or two
it's so funny with the track. I can still remember, of course, the NES Advantage, the arcade.
Yes,
stick
the big arcade stick.
Everything.
Yeah, the NES Advantage, which if any time you need to drive the Statue of Liberty through New York City, that's what you use, the NES Advantage.
Yeah. Don't forget the most important peripheral of all, the Power Glove.
The glove.
How could we forget that? Oh, but the NES Advantage, like that, one of the most magical days of my life was when I had borrowed someone's Advantage, and I owned the Ghostbusters 2 game, so I got to play the Statue of Liberty level with that controller. It was a defining moment in my life.
Did you have Your Love Is Lifting Me Higher playing in the background?
It's a bonus stage, and it does play an 8-bit version of Higher and Higher.
That's great. That's absolutely brilliant. I still have an NES, and it still works. So maybe and there's plenty of used game stores around here. Maybe I'll dig that up just for that.
Yeah, I sold my original, but I just for my 30th birthday, someone surprised me with a refurbished NES because they remembered me mentioning how I regretted selling mine. So.
Well, my wife April has the original gray block. I have one of the Retro Duo consoles, which can play multiple cartridges in the console. Mine plays NES and Super Nintendo games.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm set. But yes, it came out in 1983 in Japan. It would later come to the United States in 1985, but it was originally known as the Famicom, the family computer. A little history for you boys and girls. The video game crash of 1983. Thank you, Atari.
Well, so much Atari's was like the 11 billion companies trying to get in on the video game market at the time, because
yes, and to further that, Atari had no infrastructure in place with its IPs, so anybody could make video games based on any Atari properties.
Yep.
Nintendo learned from that, and they said, okay, we're going to develop our own IPs and keep them. We're not going to let anybody else play with them.
Yeah, because the video game market was new at the time, so they didn't think that they would need to protect themselves from this. Like, basically, people just straight up copying and pasting their game onto a new system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in the intro, yes, Nintendo has been around as a business since 1889. So anytime I see a Nintendo's Doomed article, I just go,
It's just funny to think of, we hear Nintendo, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is, of course, video games, and that wasn't always the case. That's the thing that always just... It's basically, I mean, they were playing cards. It was Hanafuda cards.
yes!
And it's, I think it's so funny that, like, if you think about that in America, to put that in American terms, it's like if the bicycle playing card company started making video games.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, Nintendo had been making playing cards for almost 90 years, and then they decided, well, let's see about this whole what is this whole electronics thing all about? And so they had their the Game & Watch series, and then they decided to make a home console, which initially, because of the video game crash, and because the amount of money that the video game industry made dropped 97%. Between 83 and 84, retailers in this country were a little reluctant, to say the least, to let their console be released in this country, given what had just happened to Atari. So Nintendo had to remake the Famicom, and they had to rebrand it. They couldn't call it a video game console, so it was renamed the Nintendo Entertainment System. And it got released in the United States in just a few select test markets, some of the major cities. And then, seeing how successful it was, then it got released, all over the country, and it was a runaway success.
I mean, to kind of just give it an example of just how ingrained it became, excuse me, all I have to say is think of how many people you say Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, and that infamous cartridge that came with the system, and everybody knows it.
Fucking dog.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite convention stories is the very first year I went to Otakon in Baltimore. There was a guy there, this was 2001, had made a bandolier of cartridges of just Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt all along, and he had written, put the tape on and written on the tape, "Go ahead, ask me why." So, being this was my first real convention, so I didn't know that, it's not usually a good idea to actually ask the person what their sign means. So I asked, and he's like, well, I was in a thrift store, and I saw this game for sale. I was already like in Funko Land or something. The game was for sale for 50 cents. This game deserves better. So I bought up every copy they had, and have tried to do so whenever possible. I've since driven the price up to $2.50. He just has a stack of it somewhere.
Just a stack of Mario Brothers Duck Hunt cartridges. Like, yeah, I've got them.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually it's going to be worth something. It might take another 50 or so years, but...
Yep.
Well, also keep in mind that, again, because, there was some early trepidation, and then the fact that this was a runaway success, Nintendo just completely dominated at the time because, well, obviously, there was no other competitor, really.
Yeah, I mean, the only competitor was Atari with they had another system come out, didn't they? The Master System or something like that?
Master
or is that
System
later
is Sega.
Okay, that's Sega. Okay, never mind. But there was another. I thought Atari had another system around Nintendo's.
Was that the 600?
I don't know if it was the 64 or the 32. It could be. I don't know. But basically, it was like there's so much of a graphical difference between the Atari and the Nintendo. It was just not to mention because Atari still hadn't really figured out its IP issue thing. Like there were still some Atari clone games on the Nintendo. So
yes, and it was just the fact that, and then we come along, late 80s, early 90s, and get one of these consoles, and the fun begins.
Mm-hmm.
This is our introduction to, obviously the very first video game I ever played, and probably for many people, was Super Mario Brothers. That was the first.
Yep.
And, with the success of the console, even its design flaws are now legend in geek game culture. The blowing in the cartridge, the jiggling the cartridge in the console.
Yeah.
Playing with the lid open or closed. There's a couple other things that jump out at me. But they're particularly the sharp edges on the controller. Like, it's not sharp per se, but after playing it for 3 or 4 hours with 5-year-old hands, you have these very large square indents on your hands, and you're wondering where they're from.
You're building up calluses for 30 years down the road when you don't have to worry about a console really freezing on you, so much, and you can just marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the difficulty of games were legendary.
Nintendo hard.
Yes, and if you had a good video game cartridge with the ability to save, that was gold.
Yeah, I know that's what made Zelda such a huge thing.
Yes.
It was, there was no way to finish that game in one sitting unless you were completely insane.
Or speedrunning it, but no one was doing speedruns. Well, I shouldn't say that. I would imagine there's some person in a basement in Japan or the US or Europe that was doing speedruns of Zelda back in 1987 or 89.
They had memorized everything.
Yeah, I imagine there was people that doing that, but they had no way of showing off those skills.
And
compared to today. Compared to today, where you can just go on Twitch and YouTube it or Twitch and just watch someone do it right now, probably.
Yeah. So many games, it's game over. Load from your last save point, whereas game over was
You're
game
doomed.
over. Game over, man.
Game over. And to a 5-year-old who, is trying to navigate World 8 on Super Mario Brothers, game over was like a death cry was game over. No! And you worked hours to get to that point. And
go ahead.
There were times where I would play Super Mario Brothers, before I go to school, leave the game on pause, and wait to come home and pray that the system hadn't froze.
Yeah. There's... And I have to say, though, that is one thing, like, these virtual console releases have made me feel so much better about myself. Because I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go back and play this game that I played as a kid. And now that I'm older, it's like, oh, yeah, it's going to be a breeze. And it's like, no, it's still hard. I was like, okay, it wasn't just me being a dumb kid.
Yeah.
It was like the original Mega Man. I tried going back and playing it now, and I'm like, oh, the game's still telling me to fuck off 25 years later. Okay.
Yeah. Most of the Mega Man games are pretty notorious for that. I mean, you keep in mind, too, like, for those who don't know, like, the reason these games are so hard is just because, like, if you tried beating them in one sitting, you could, because they only had like 2 or 3 hours of actual gameplay to it. But the fact that you would die and restart the entire game over so many times was just adding to the length of time you're playing in the game.
Yes, and those NES controllers, for as not ergonomic as they were robust. They could take a beating.
Yeah, that's another little staple of Nintendo's.
Oh yeah,
or the system itself can take a fair bit of beating.
I think we, as 4 or 5 years old, 5-year-old, gamers trying to beat Mario or Zelda or Mega Man or what have you, we figured out what rage quit meant at a very early age. It was
yeah, it was not a pleasant feeling.
No, and you in 5 years old, you think you have Herculean might, and you're going to smash this controller, and the controller's like, no, we're fine. Fine, we're good. They were robust.
Well, it was a square block, so...
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, oh my god. So, now that we've, they're talking about the console and, the memories we've had with it, let's dive into some of the games.
Oh,
that we...
So many games.
There were so many games. I mean, I owned an NES. I blew through 2 NESs. And, I mean, as kids, there's obviously the classics. Mario, Duck Hunt. Nintendo invented the DDR pad before it was called the DDR pad.
Yeah, one of those track and field, and it was a DDR pad, wasn't it? It had the arrows on it, but it didn't have the diagonals. It only had A, B, start, select.
Oh yes, the D-pad, one of the greatest inventions ever.
You had, for those of us who enjoy watching speedruns, like you have Contra and Ninja Gaiden, because nothing says fuck you like Ninja Gaiden. Yeah, Ninja Gaiden with its fuck you, I'm going to win, like cheating, even though that's just the trying to be exciting gameplay through difficulty.
That was one of the things though that was one of our favorite excuses though. Anytime that we sucked at a game, the game's cheating.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we actually were right. The game was cheating.
So far, actually, in all the video games I've played, there's only been one game that I could legitimately say the game is cheating, and that was the original Mario Kart.
Oh.
Because all the other computer opponents had power-ups that you could never have.
Those freaking mushrooms.
Mario that could turn on a star whenever he likes, etc. But anyway, that's Super Nintendo. Back to Nintendo.
Yeah.
One of the games I had as a kid, Marble Madness.
Bro,
that game drove me nuts. Like I remember renting that a couple times, and it just I could never get the hang of that one.
I almost beat it. I made it to the final race, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I rented it too, and was like, this seems weird. I don't know what's going on. I'm bringing this marble through like geometric shapes. And I'm very confused. This feels like a math game.
Yeah, the games I have a lot of fondness for still is okay. Not the first one, but the second and third Ninja Turtles games. Like
okay,
the arcade game, and the one that was based off the arcade game, and then the one that was called the Manhattan Project, where the city of Manhattan got somehow lifted into the sky. Much like, cities living in the sky. It sounds like another recent game. But yeah, I those were like some of my earliest, side scroller beat 'em ups that I just absolutely love.
And you bring up, and now that I remember that, the sheer volume of licensed games that the Nintendo had.
I mean, not everyone. There was plenty of that were complete and utter just terrible. Slap a skin on it. We gotta rush this out to capitalize on the name.
Like the Willow video game.
Oh god.
Well, think about this. Like, name a very popular movie from like the late '80s or early '90s in the U.S. Good chance it was a game. We mentioned Ghostbusters. Yeah. There was that. You mentioned Willow.
Top Gun.
Oh. Fuck that landing part. Fuck it in the air.
Question: What came first for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? The game, the TV show, or the movie? I honestly don't know.
The comic,
I believe it was the. I want to say it was the TV show, the games, then the movie.
Sounds right, but I want
that very first game that was so weird and so harsh at times.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the city, but then because that was roughly it. But I remember they used the weirdest thing was they used the old comic art for like that cartridge, or the cartridge and the box, because all of them had they all had the same color masks and stuff.
Right.
But then there was that weird one, and then it had to be the other stuff because I'm sure because the first game still had like Bebop and Rocksteady. And I remember I was always Donatello because he had the insane reach with the bow. And like there's like a couple boss fights where you'd like just jump up in a corner where they could not reach but you could reach them. And just kind of
whack him with the stick.
Yep.
Another classic for me, and thankfully he appeared in Wreck-It Ralph, and that was Peter Pepper from Burger Time.
Oh, Burger Time was that was a Nintendo one?
Yes.
Because it was an arcade eventually.
It was on other stuff.
Arcade first, then.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that.
I mean, there was a lot of arcade ports.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yes.
And the of course all the Donkey Kong variations.
Yes, Donkey Kong. We did touch upon Mega Man and how the box art of Mega Man looked nothing like Mega Man.
Oh, yeah, I would love to do like a segment on like a show for like Penny Arcade Expo or something where it's like identify the game by its original box art. like Mega Man and stuff like that, and see what people get.
That'd be interesting. Obviously, Zelda 2. Zelda 2 with the infamous first guy, I Am Error.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention Metal Gear?
We did not. Metal Gear, I Feel Asleep, first guard.
Yeah.
And, Metal Gear, which is infinitely successful and still going on today.
Yep, it's so amazing to look at how many franchises we're aware of now. That's like, they are institutions that they got their start on the NES.
Yes. Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and let's see, what other game did I have? Double Dragon.
Double Dragon.
Yeah. Double Dragon.
The NES really succeeded at beat 'em ups.
Yeah. Yes, it did. Platformers and beat 'em ups. It was absolutely, the system to play them on. Although to be honest, I mean, you mentioned Donkey Kong. My introduction to Donkey Kong was Donkey Kong Country. I had never played the previous Donkey Kong games until later.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Let's see, what other game? Punch-Out!
Yeah, featuring
Mike
Mr.
Tyson,
Dream.
fuck you.
Or Mr. Dream, depending on when you've got it.
Yeah, when you got it, it was either Mike Tyson or Mr.
Which
Dream.
is, I think that's another great example of just how successful it was. They had to do a re-release of the game, and they couldn't get the likeness rights anymore.
Yeah, this was before he chewed off Holyfield's ear, was it?
Yeah.
Yes, this was back when Mike Tyson was actually a boxer and not a thug.
Yep. A joke.
Yeah, pretty much. Punch-Out, which luckily also spawned a series of. I think there was even a Wii version of Punch-Out.
Yep, there was, and I remember it serves the Wii version actually was pretty well received.
Yeah, it's not realistic boxing. It's a Punch-Out game, but if you like that, it's a lot of fun. It's memorize the pattern and you know when to strike.
Yes.
Memorization and basically dodge, counter punch.
Yep.
And Mario as the ref.
There's a great section of just like Mario cameos in video games. Like he's like a ref in tennis. Oh
yes, and you just mentioned NES Tennis, and Nintendo put out its own sports line. I mean, you had tennis, baseball,
hockey,
yes,
Blades of Steel.
Yes, I own Blades of Steel.
That was one of my favorite first sports games that I really liked and enjoyed and played a lot out of.
The first sports game I really enjoyed was Tecmo Bowl.
Oh wow!
Tecmo Bowl the Wii Virtual Console of Tecmo Bowl, because they don't have the rights to use those players' names anymore. Now there's just a blank on the upper corner of the screen. All you'd have is the number.
Oh jeez.
I remember going to my cousin's house, and they didn't have many games, but they were very large sports fans. Like, one of the few games they did have was Tecmo Bowl, and it was just funny to watch them, like, just play that, and just watch them throw the ball, like, 50-some-odd yards, because it's a video game. It's not really gonna happen.
Oh, yes.
Ever.
Though I never owned it, I have to say, though, if we're talking sports games for the NES, the game I absolutely loved, and I want to see if anybody else remembers this, Base Wars.
Nope. You got me.
You had a team of it was robot baseball basically, and you had you had a couple different types of robots. Like you had one that was like they were all like human upper torso, and then you had like one was like a hover, one was like tank treads, one was like a giant motorcycle wheel, and stuff like that. And if if the ball got to a base before you, instead of automatic out like normal baseball, you would fight. And if the defending team won, it would be an out. If the offensive team won, it would be safe. Yeah, and which was that alone was pretty fun because I was terrible at the baseball part of it. But thankfully, my brother was terrible at the fighting part of it.
So it balanced out.
Yeah.
And to make it even better, is if one of the players lost too many fights, they would explode.
Brian, think about this for a moment. You can steal first base.
Yeah. And even that, and I actually, at least one or two games my brother and I played of this. I destroyed so many of his players he had to forfeit the game. That's legit what happened, and it was. I've never seen a game quite like it since, and it was just such a fun idea.
There was I know that there was a Super NES version of that too. So.
Oh yeah.
It was That actually sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
That sounds like an incredible lot of fun. An NES game I did not play until Virtual Console. My God, the colors! Kirby's Adventure.
Oh, I loved that game.
Pastels exploding all over the screen.
That was like that was like one of the few NES games that I remember that was very much a a sort of a, what am I trying to say? You know, alternate paths. You got to find the secret things to get the full completion and everything like that.
Yes.
This was something new for me too. Like, this would have been later on the NES, like probably near like when the SNES was coming out. But did any of you play the Tiny Toons Adventures?
Yep.
Game?
I didn't, but I know of it.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun. It for those who don't know, it's not a platformer, but it's with the Tiny Toons license. So you have Babs and
Buster and
all the second gen Looney Tunes characters, and you have to rescue the original generation because of something or other.
Yep.
Again, a lot of those licensed games, which, you know, for some reason the quality of licensed games has plummeted in recent generations. It's
I feel like part of it is so many of these licensed games now, they have to move it, you know, ahead of time so they don't have as much to work off of. Whereas like these NES games, they kind of waited for whatever their license to be established and everything like that.
Or we just grew up and went, oh my god, we played these?
Yeah. I think... Wait, have you mentioned Metroid yet?
No!
Oh, how did we forget that?
Metroid, of course, with one of the most iconic plot twists in video games
history.
Yeah. Metroid. Thinking that you're going through this entire game blasting shit as this big buff dude in armor, and then at the end of the game, surprise, you've been playing as a woman!
Yep.
Which is a bigger shock for gamers, learning that Samus is a girl or learning that Bridget wasn't?
Okay. Brian, I don't think you know who Bridget is.
I do not.
You've
lost me.
I will explain. There is a person in a fighting game from Japan whose name is Bridget. They dress in a very short skirt and a one piece, and they use yo-yos as a weapon. Guess what this person's gender is?
Well, you've already given it away. So, and the only explanation I can think of is it's Japan.
Yes.
Yep.
Just like Birdo is the first Nintendo IP character to gender switch.
Yeah. I would say Samus is the bigger of the two, just because, one, it was so early on in the video game.
I also think that Metroid is more well known.
That too.
Yeah.
Because obscure Japanese fighting game versus one of the Nintendo's top 3 IPs.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd never even heard of this until you just mentioned it. I mean, but I've known of Samus forever.
Yeah, and of course there was the infamous, what was it, Justin Bailey password, where you could play through the game as her without an armor on, and you know, going around as one. Did we bring up Castlevania yet?
No, and yeah, keep going.
That's another one that was, you know, it has spawned a massive franchise. And what's interesting with there is how that franchise has evolved. Like, that used to be so much more of kind of the action platformer and very linear, whereas now it's, you know, well, we refer to the type of game as a Metroidvania thanks to Symphony of the Night, but yeah, some of those, and once again, legendarily hard at times. Castlevania could be brutal at times.
Oh yeah, I mean, I played a little bit of the original Castlevania, and then I'm just like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope, not doing this. No, and now it's evolved into game. Now, as you said, the series has evolved. We have got a lot more robust stories, deeper gameplay, and you know, things like that. Going back to Mario, because I mean, obviously Mario's the face of the franchise. The jump from Mario 1 to 2.
Yeah. So different. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I mean, I think we all know, but if you don't, we'll explain it to our listeners out there. Super Mario Brothers 2, as we know it here, was not its original name. I think, what is it, a Doki Doki Panic game?
Maybe.
Yes, it's Domi Doki or Doki Doki Panic or something like that.
It was originally Super Mario Brothers 2 was going to be what we know as the Lost Levels.
Mm-hmm.
But Nintendo had come to the conclusion that Lost Levels would be too difficult for an American audience. They're right. They're right, because I can't get through Lost Levels without the ability to save, and Lost Levels made it over here on the Super Nintendo collection, Super Mario All-Stars.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, just fuck off, no.
How many times do you die in the purple mushroom at the start of the level?
Well, here's the thing. I've played the NES version of Lost Levels. The difference between the regular mushroom and the poison mushroom is slight. It's a slight palette switch, whereas in the Super Nintendo version, it's clearly noticeable. Good mushroom is the orange with the orange and red top. Bad mushroom is purple.
Yeah.
The NES version was good mushroom, looks like, the super mushroom, and the poison mushroom, slightly darker.
Yeah, but yeah, talking the American versions, yeah, and just the amazing difference in jump in gameplay from Mario, the first one to Super Mario World 2, or Super Mario Brothers 2, sorry, is just fantastic, and it's creates such a much more rich setup. I mean, the one thing I always thought was just blew my mind were the times when there's levels like, oh yeah, you can ride on the enemies, and the only way to progress is to do so. And that just was like mind-boggling as a kid. It's like you thought it was, just some clever trick that you could do, and it's like, no, you have to do that.
You have to do that, and and can we all agree, Peach, most broken character ever in that game?
Oh, I use Peach so much because I was so bad at some of the platforming.
Well, it's not even the platforming is bad. There's certain sections of the game where you almost can't progress unless you have perfect jump timing.
Yep.
Well, that's the case with all the Mario games. I mean, how often did we experience growing up? You have to bridge this giant gulf, this huge gap on the screen, and you just make it by a pixel because we didn't have physics yet.
Well, there was a couple chasms I remember in the original Mario, where it was 5-1 or something like that.
Oh,
one of those where it's a very large gap, and you're looking at this thing going, "There's no way I can clear that." Even if I was running at full speed, I couldn't clear it. Well, actually, you can, even though you're standing on a block 2 pixels wide. You only need 1 pixel to run it back to full speed.
Yeah, because we didn't have physics, so you could clear that jump if you managed to get the very last toe pixel on the block.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have physics yet, and you then breathe the biggest sigh of relief.
Yep. But if we're going to the I'm sorry, I interrupted.
And before you get to your point, Mario Brothers 2, we didn't have Koopa, we didn't have that, and then the number one selling Mario Brothers game of all time, Mario 3.
That's exactly where I was going.
Mario 3.
So, did any of you guys ever see The Wizard with Fred Savage? The movie.
Yes, I did.
I did.
Yeah,
not.
and when they unveil, it's the kid's supposed to be just incredible at video games, and the big reveal for the final competition is a game that's never been played before, and it's Super Mario Brothers 3, and it's just like, what?
Yeah, for Brian, the kid. It's basically it's a story of a bunch of kids traveling across the U.S. from, I want to say Seattle or something.
Yeah.
And it's the West Coast, and they're going to Florida for this convention because they want to win this convention, which has a video game convention that Nintendo's hosting. They want to win it because it's the money surprise at the end, and they want to like use this money to stop their parents from getting a divorce, I think, or something like that. And the kid that they're bringing along with them, this is me personally, I don't think he was autistic, and it's just that he just connected with video games very well. And basically, they would spend like all their quarters and misadventures of getting money traveling across the U.S. and like every night they'd go to an arcade, and this kid would just plop down in front of an arcade for a couple hours and just get high score on like 3 or 4 different machines before they move on for the next day.
Yeah. And of course, there's the big rival character. He's like, I have all the Nintendo games and the Power Glove.
He played with the Power Glove in for one of the scenes.
So Mario 3, which for the first time, the game is presented as a map. And then basically Nintendo took the Mario 3 formula and have used it in countless Mario games since. We're 8 worlds, and this time you have that wonderful thing called a continue. Holy shit!
The flute too, for those who want speed run.
The item inventory.
Yep, the item inventory, and an incredibly long game. I mean, again, no save. You can't save it, so if you wanted to go through all 8 worlds, hunker down. You're going to be at this all night.
This was back when I was playing. Like, I was 5, 6, somewhere around there. But I was playing through Super Mario 3. And I do mean playing through it, like I was going like stage. Fuck stage 6, by the way.
Was that the one where everything was big and you were tiny, or was that the one?
Yeah, that was the one where it was big and everything else was tiny. It was like, nope, fuck this. I get to stage 8, and I'm fighting Bowser, and I'm winning, and Kettle Freeze.
Oh yeah. And then broken controller.
I let it sit because it was dinner, and I was like, maybe it'll unfreeze itself. No. I was slightly miffed.
Slightly, yes. And yeah, the sick thing is that all these Mario games I never beat until All-Stars with the advent of a save function. So
yeah.
So there we go.
I did beat Mario 1 without a save eventually. It took me a while, but I did beat it.
I did too. Took me 15 years, but I did. So, alright, so on our second half, we will continue waxing nostalgic, games flying fast and furious on this 30th anniversary episode of the Nintendo Entertainment System. We'll be back. Welcome back to this nostalgia-filled episode, waxing nostalgia over the NES. Ron and Doug are still here. They have not become 8-bit sprites of themselves.
We haven't died a pixelated horrible death.
Nope. Doug, even though Doug's at a convention center, he has not slayed everyone dressed up as the Red Mage. So,
Yet.
Yes, give him time.
There's still a couple more hours. But
There's still, yes.
okay.
All right, so continuing on with this Fast and Furious, I want to start with Contra.
Oh, yes. Speaking of slaying everyone.
Yeah, this was one of those games where it was really kill everything on the screen.
And kill it multiple times.
Yep. And of course, Contra is kind of our first entry, and we mentioned the Ninja Turtles games too, but the infamous Konami code.
Yeah, up, down, down, left, right,
Yeah, I mean, how many people who never even played these games on a Nintendo console still know what the Konami code is?
30 lives, and you needed every single one of them for Contra.
Keep in mind too, like the Konami code, so
Ubiquitous.
omnipresent, ubiquitous. Yeah, it's in multiple games, including games not made by Konami.
Yeah.
That's how popular in gamer culture it's become. It is so ubiquitous. It is in, we've got T-shirts, and yes, it's in games that are not made by Konami. It's the stuff of legend. And Contra, my God, that final boss. Oh my God.
Oh, Red Falcon.
Oh my God, I think that was the first game I played which can be considered bullet hell.
Yes. And it kept that tradition very strong. I still remember getting Contra 3D Alien Wars. Found that at a thrift shop near college, sealed for $10.
Holy shit!
Yeah, that was the thrift shop right near the hamburger stand near the school, and I remember getting that, and I just remember getting through, finally beating the final boss on the hard difficulty, and it's like, hey, guess what? You get to do it all again to get the real ending, and I was just like, no, I can't even.
Fuck you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
It's like, clearly you had too much fun playing this game. We need to fix that.
I never went in. This was a store by Jack's?
Yes.
I don't...
The tiny weird little thrift store right by Jack's.
Because I was in North Adams just recently. It's not there anymore.
Oh.
Jack's is still there, but
of course.
That whole street has pretty much changed.
I think the only things that could stay there are Jack's Hot Dog Stand and Village Pizza.
Just as a tiny aside before we continue, every time I go to North Adams with April, we always hit Jack's. Always. Always. All right, moving on. Doug, there was some other games you wanted to hit?
I'm just trying to think of off the top of my head. There's several games that it seemed like everybody had a copy of it, and one of the ones I was going to bring up was DuckTales, especially now that they're doing the remastered one version of that. And it's funny because it's like, it's not like a groundbreaking game or anything. It's just, once again, a platformer, for some licensed game that just turned out to be really fun and well put together. And
keep going.
And I was going to just say, and I just remember when that announcement hit, it was like the internet just lost its shit. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, remastered DuckTales!
Because Disney, they're not really well known for making good games, but there was a couple of them that just stood out. I remember DuckTales. The other one I remember was for the Genesis, Castle of Illusion.
Mickey, yeah. Another good one.
Yeah, it's just, I think DuckTales is one of those great examples of you didn't have to be special or do anything groundbreaking to make a solid NES game. You could kind of follow the formula and do a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, and it was. I never played DuckTales, but I mean, obviously, I know of its success. And I remember when that game was announced at this past E3. Yeah, people who are our age just had nostalgia feels all over the place.
It's like Oprah doing one of her favorite things announcements. The audience just going crazy.
Uh-huh. Everybody wins a car! No.
Yeah. And you get DuckTales, and you get DuckTales.
Hey, Scrooge McDuck, he may have enough money to get everyone on cars. They'd probably be gold plated too.
Yes. Some other classics. I know one that April enjoyed was Paperboy. April really loved Paperboy.
Nothing wrong with that. That was one that I could never do too well in. I think part of it was my compulsion. It's like, I'm going to break all the windows, even if they're my customers or not.
Yeah, you have to get that inner bully rage out of the way. I don't care. There are windows here to break. Fling!
Yeah, that was a game I could not do too well. I rented it, gave it like a good half hour. It was like I still couldn't get like the piece of paper onto the first driveway, or like walk up into the front door. It's like, okay, I'm done. Screw this.
Yeah. Dr. Mario, was that an NES title?
That
Yes,
was NES. Okay. That was one of those NES and Game Boy simultaneous releases.
Because, I mean, Dr. Mario, basically a spin-off of Tetris, which we also didn't mention. I know Tetris, had it's more of its a Game Boy thing, but Tetris also came out on the NES.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Tetris was one of those games that my mother could beat the shit out of me with. She was just that good at it, and I'm just like, well, meh. I just had it. Again, another arcade port, Hubert, which was in Wreck-It Ralph, and I was just so happy.
The other one, another one that I was just thinking of, and going back to. It's not quite a license, but it acted like one because it was trying to capitalize on Ninja Turtles, and legendarily hard, the original Battletoads. That bike level.
God.
There's a special place in hell reserved for the person who made that level.
There is a special hell for you.
I'm pretty sure there's special levels of hell for people who made Battletoads, because there are certain games that are hard, there's certain games that are difficult, there's certain games that are cheat, and then there's Battletoads.
Ron just puts it in a whole category by itself. It is in the fuck you category.
Yeah.
Doug, I know you have to go in a couple of minutes, but I want to mention one last game before you head out.
Mm-hmm.
This game was never released in the U.S., but I know a lot of people play it. It came out for the Famicom in Japan only, and that was Mother.
Yes. Oh, I still need to sit down and play that, because that, of course, spawned the sequel Mother 2, better known as Earthbound. And I'm honestly surprised we haven't gotten some form of re-release, HD master or something for those games, because that's one of those games I just have so many fond memories for.
Nintendo has stated it outright, like it's in licensing hell, or legal hell, for the Mother series, which is why Mother 3 never came over to the US.
That is a damn shame.
Mother, incidentally, I mean, it only came out in Japan. It's on the Famicom, and it also came out in Japan on the Game Boy Advance.
Mm.
So, and I know that Game Boy Advance games are not region locked. So, if you know Japanese, although I'm sure weren't there. I think this game was one of those games that got a fan localization.
Yeah. The fan localization, mind you, was a lot easier for an NES game than it was for a Game Boy Advance game.
Oh, yes. And, of course, the magic of emulators, so...
Yeah. The main thing with, like, the Mother series was, like, again, there's this certain level of weirdness to it, but it's still oddly, real. Like, you're not really using swords or fighting fantasy monsters. You're mostly, I think in Mother, you're actually just fighting straight up, like, ghosts. Yeah. And like aliens.
Yeah. So, just mentioning one other one that crossed my mind that was one of the games I had. And once again, we're talking licensed games, and like some of them knocked it out of the park, and some of them were just horrible. Adam's Family Fester's Quest. that game, oh my god, that game got me so angry. Because you'd go into you'd have kind of the top down, walking around, shooting things, and then you'd go into a building and it'd be that little sort of 3D maze that you're walking around, trying to figure out I got to find this alien boss to fight or find this special item. And it seemed like to be the only door I could ever find was the door I came in from. But
congratulations, you are now walking around the Microsoft Windows 3.1 maze of hell.
Yep, pretty much.
Just remember, turn left. Always turn left.
Always turn left. Doug, whenever you need to cut out, just let me know.
Yep.
Another game I remember fondly, Ghosts and Goblins. That was a Capcom.
Yes.
A Capcom title. It had a long string of releases, actually, before it got to the NES. It was a Commodore game. It was arcade first, and then it got Commodore releases, Amiga releases, NES.
It's another one of those games that falls into two things we kind of mentioned before, which is, hey, you beat it, now you got to play it again to really beat it. And also, but it was beyond that. It was also one of those that got a pretty awesome upgrade to just kind of redo it as a super. They did a super Ghosts and Goblins, and I remember just playing that, and that was an early release. It was still a lot of fun for the Super Nintendo.
Ghosts and Goblins. I played this briefly, and it was just again, because a lot of these games are so hard. 5-year-old, I can't get past the first level. If I did, it was amazing.
You had no lives remaining by the second.
Yeah. It was just and the thing was, even if you weren't 5, even if you were an older gamer and you beat an NES game, you had bragging rights.
Yep.
You had bragging rights. It was just, what other game did I have? Oh yes, this game is kind of a laughingstock now. But it was fun. It was fun as a kid. Balloon Fight.
Oh jeez. Oh jeez.
Try to avoid the flashing, shiny things as you're navigating this balloon with a little dude attached to it.
I know what. Do you know what we forgot to mention?
What?
Kid Icarus. I mean,
fucking God.
Yeah, how did we forget that one for so long?
How many of us are now combing through the Super Smash Brothers library and going, wait a minute,
yeah.
What did they pull? Yes, Ice Climbers.
But yeah, and that's another one. And yeah, all right. I'm getting ready to head out, but if you want to just toss this in, I'll just say, my kind of final thoughts is,
go ahead.
For a gateway system, the NES still holds up pretty well. I mean, the games that aren't completely impossible, you can still pick up and have a lot of fun, and it doesn't take 20 hours to complete it. You can play a game in an afternoon, and I think that's kind of why it succeeded and has stayed in so many hearts so long.
And also now with the magic of emulators.
Mm-hmm. The rewind button is a very nice thing.
It is a very nice thing.
The quick save.
The save state, yes. It's a beautiful thing. But yes, it was a great gateway system. It spawned a lot of franchises that still exist today. And, that's the mark of a great system. So, thank you very much, Doug. I will let you get back to your convention.
All right, take it easy, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, later.
Yep. And then there were 2. So now, Ron, you will have Ron and I to finish this out for you.
It's when we don't kill each other in some grand apocalyptic battle between who is the true gamer fan, I guess.
Oh, there'd have to be an 8-bit explosion.
Obviously 8 bits. Obviously.
It would have to be an obvious 8-bit explosion. Let's see. I know Ice Climbers was popular. I never played it.
I never played it either. I think that was probably just because of the fact that I could never find Ice Climbers at the local Blockbuster. So, the local Blockbuster was a lot of kid-friendly titles because that's the neighborhood that it was servicing. So just carry all those things.
I mean, it was available. I mean, it came out in the U.S. in '85, and then it got a Game Boy Advance release, and it's on the Virtual Console. So if you want to play it, Ron, it's there.
I can always emulate it too.
Of course. Then there's the magic of the emulator.
Yeah.
I want my save state. Damn it.
It's not the save state that I want. It's just the fact that I can save state before the beginning of a level. That's generally what I do for most games. Mm-hmm. And if I happen to die, fully game over, I just quickly reload save state back at that and just save myself 20 minutes or so of playing the game to get back to that level.
Okay, I can see your point there. I mean, there's been a couple of NES games that I have played on emulator. Dragon Quest II, Dragon Warrior 2.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I got it out of the way. I'll never play it again.
Yeah, I know. I think the only game that I, quote-unquote, save scum my way through is Zelda 2, just because of the final dungeon, where you only find X number of keys, and X does not equal Y, in the sense that there's more doors than there are keys, and you can actually lock yourself out of the final... keep yourself locked out of the final boss room.
Oops.
Yeah. And that was just another Nintendo hard thing. So...
Yeah, and... then, of course, we had all these very hard games, but we also had games that had the ability to save. I mean... while many of these games you could play in an afternoon, with a few hours, or by writing down copious amounts of passwords, RPGs, Final Fantasy.
Yep, Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest / Dragon Warrior
yeah. I mean, Final
were the main two ones. And I think that was more so just due to the fact that the designers recognized that, hey, we made this game that, honestly, we don't want people to beat in 5 hours or 4 hours. You want them to enjoy it. Either because they want you to enjoy the story for what little there is, or B, you have to spend hours upon hours grinding out slimes to level up.
Yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy 1, for its time, was a very long game. It was a 20-hour game, but which is short by our standards today. But for NES standard, it's a long fucking game.
Yeah. For NES game, 20 hours is probably one of the longer, if not longest, play times.
Yeah, I mean, definitely so. And Dragon Warrior, with its own unique mechanic, it was a true JRPG, but your party was one.
Party of one, and the monster you would fight. Was it monster fights 1-on-1? I don't remember.
Yes, it was 1-on-1.
Okay, because I just remember thinking, oh dear God, I hope I don't fight multiple monsters, otherwise I'm fucked.
Yeah. It was 1-on-1, and again, it spawned very famous franchises still going on today. We mentioned Mega Man. The first 6 Mega Man games were released on the NES.
Yeah. Just side back to Mega Man. I mentioned you also have the phrase and trope of slime has appeared.
Ah, yes. What wouldst thou do?
Yes. You mentioned Mega Man. I mean, Capcom really did the Nintendo, the NES.
Oh yeah, I mean, Capcom was a huge third party for the NES.
Yes. Surprise, surprise, listeners. Nintendo was not only known for 3 games and nothing else. They used to have a very, very large third-party library and they loved the Nintendo Entertainment System because it made them buckets upon buckets of money.
Oh, Capcom, Konami. Well, also keep in mind that Nintendo was really the only thing around until Sega came along in the late '80s, early '90s.
That's true, but still, I mean, even after Sega came along, I think most people favored Nintendo because
Super Nintendo still kept that third-party support going. Yeah,
exactly.
Big time. We briefly mentioned Duck Hunt.
Yeah, fucking dog.
Fucking dog.
Yes, I know I missed that duck. You can stop laughing at me.
And also another thing I remember for the NES, that not just movie and video game tie-in games, but also game show games.
Yes, there were a lot. There were a fair number of game show games. You had.
I owned Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, I was saying there was Wheel of Fortune, and I'm pretty sure there was a Jeopardy one.
There definitely was. Yep.
Price is Right, possibly.
Actually, I'm gonna consult the list of NES games. There was no Price is Right. However, there was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah. You correct me if I'm wrong when you're reading off that list, but I swear there was a art one, like you would make art on the Nintendo.
Well, there was a game based on the game show Win, Lose, or Draw.
I don't think it was Win, Lose, or Draw. I think it was like you actually doing like 8-bit artwork or radios and like an 8-bit chiptune set or something like that.
I don't know. I've not heard of that. I mean, the only one that comes to mind is Mario Paint, and that was a Super Nintendo.
Maybe I'm thinking of Mario Paint. I don't remember, but I could have sworn there was one on the NES too.
There was a game that I played. I never owned, but I played this. I loved this game. I never beat it. And it's a rare. It was a rare game then, and it's rare now. The game was called Air Fortress. It was made by HAL Laboratory, the same people who brought us Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically your typical alien invasion type game. In which each level it was side to side, sort of like a shooting type game. A little bit of bullet hell, and I love this game. And it was
you keep mentioning bullet hell. Like, wasn't there Galacta, or there was one or two bullet hell games that were on the NES too, weren't there?
Let's see. You're not thinking of Galaga, are you?
Maybe thinking of Galaga.
I mean, Galaga was an arcade game at first.
Yeah, it was arcade first, but that just was ported to the NES.
Well, it was. Well, it's the sequel to Galaxian.
Okay.
And it was kind of like it kind of had that sort of feel like Space Invaders almost.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I never played Galaga actually on the NES. I did play Gauntlet though.
Yeah, I played Gauntlet too.
I also played it on the Game Boy. It was like, Elf now is about to die. It was like, yeah, don't say that.
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Don't condemn me yet without a trial. I'm looking through the list of NES and some of the laughable titles. Like the Home Alone games.
Yeah, I forgot about those. I forgot those existed.
The Indiana Jones games.
Those are actually pretty decent from reserves.
Jurassic Park.
Wait, there was a Star Wars game, wasn't there?
There had to have been.
There had to have been a Star Wars game. I know there was one for the Game Boy. There had to be one for the NES.
There were two of them for the NES. One was Star Wars, and the other one was The Empire Strikes Back.
I was going to say, because I remember there being a Return of the Jedi on the Super NES.
There was Star Trek. of course.
Yeah, Star Trek.
I mentioned Tecmo Bowl.
Was there a Die Hard game on the NES?
Well, let's find out. Yes, of course there was. That was an Activision title. It came out in '92, so toward the end of the NES's
Life cycle.
life cycle. Oh, we were talking about RPGs. When we mentioned Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior, but there was also Ultima.
Yes, Ultima. I forgot about that.
The Ultima series.
More known on PC than the console, but it did have at least. I mean, obviously NES, but I could have sworn there was a couple more Ultima games.
Ultima 3, 4, and 5 were on the NES.
Wow. Jeez. There's a lot of the Ultima.
That is definitely a lot of Ultima. Wizardry.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't there a couple... I was about to mention Wizardry 2, thinking like there should have been a couple, like, Wizard is Hungry games.
Yeah, the Wizardry, and... I mean, obviously, those games still have a cult following today.
Yeah, and they have, there's a Steam game of similar design where it's 3D graphics now, but you're still kind of moving through a 2D, like, plane sort of thing. You can, like, go forward, up, down, left, or right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, puzzle fighting monster thing. I'm trying to remember what the name of the game, what the name of it is. I can't remember.
He's blanking.
Yeah.
You know what else got their start on the NES?
What?
Prince of Persia.
That's right, it did.
Well, it was released on hold on. It was originally released on the Apple II. It got ported to the NES.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could have sworn it was on PC first. Then
it was an Apple II game first, and then got ported to NES. I don't know how many of us owned an Apple II in the early '90s.
Yeah, considering it's an Apple, and Apple was not really a major. Well, I mean, I should say that Apple was around then, but they weren't known as well known then as they were now.
You mentioned Ninja Gaiden earlier in the first half.
Yeah.
That means that you didn't get to play the Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3, I presume.
I did not. I feel like I'm better off for it.
Yeah, I'm a much more well-grounded and sane person because of that.
I'm not full of bile and hatred. Well, I might be, but I'm not spewing it off at the mouth at every other word I say.
Which might happen if you played. If you beat Ninja Gaiden, the original, God bless you. God bless you. Because you have infinitely more patience than I could ever hope to have.
Yeah.
I think we're getting down to the end here.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like more games. It's just like, for all the games I played when I was that young, it was 20 years ago, and I haven't played them since. So, I mean, other than like the obvious ones, like I played Final Fantasy, I played Zelda, I played Mario, I played Metroid, but like, I'm trying to remember the obscure titles.
I just remembered one that just flashed into my brain. Excite Bike.
Oh, Jesus, the Excite Bikes. I hated that power-up in Super Mario Brothers.
Excite Bike, where it was, a dirt bike racing game complete with ramps, and you had the ability to turbo your bike.
Turbo your bike and land on other bikers, too.
And to just go past, but you had to be careful with that turbo, because you had a thermostat.
If you rode the limit too high, your bike would explode, and you had to.
It wouldn't explode. It wouldn't explode. It would overheat, and you'd be pulled off to the side of the course for 10 seconds or so.
which was death back then because computer cheats.
That, and especially if you were doing a time trial.
That too, yeah.
Like, oh my god! So you had to have, that was a delicate balance. But that Excitebike was one of those games I spent hours on, and you could also make your own tracks.
That's true. They had designing feature too back then.
Yeah, you could design your own tracks.
Design and race on them with friends. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I say playing with friends, it's only you and one other person, right? There was no 4-player.
No. Yeah, I mean it was 2-player. You only had 2 controller ports.
Yeah, I know. Like with the SNES, eventually, like you could eventually play with up to 4 people. But I could have sworn for the NES it was only 2.
Yeah, there were 2 controller ports on the NES. It may have expanded in later versions, because I know that the NES got. This is the thing Nintendo was doing back then as well, putting out later versions of their consoles.
Yeah, like, I mean, I remember there being an updated graphical version of the NES. Well, I didn't really update graphical version, like an updated shell.
Yeah,
like
the one that had where you put the controller in top down like the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
That was done largely to fix the design flaws of the gray box we know and love.
Yeah.
And I think one of the last games I think we'll close with, because I do know people who have played this, Bomberman.
Yes, Bomberman. I played that too. I shouldn't say I can't believe I forgot about that one, but to be fair, it was largely forgettable.
It spawned a sequel.
That's true, but even then, like it's known, it exists, but it didn't take off as much as people wanted it to.
I never played Bomberman, but I definitely know people who did. Then we had Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure.
Because nothing says adventure with stoners like a video game.
Apparently not. And we talked earlier when Doug was still on about the fuck you of Battletoads.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Battletoads and Double Dragon game? It was called Battletoads and Double Dragon.
Let me think here for a moment.
As he racks his brains.
No, I remember mostly Battletoads and my intense burning hatred of 1,000 white hot suns for Battletoads. Not so much Double Dragon, because Double Dragon was actually a mostly fair game. If you died, it was probably your fault.
So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this up, and some last words on this. The NES, as I mentioned back in the beginning, was a system that we started with for many of us, and it spawned the love of video games that we had today. It was a great platform, and then the popularity of the NES led to competitors, as we know, Sega, and of course that led to the great console wars of the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that, too, like, basically Nintendo, I don't want to say almost single-handedly, but they pretty much did save the video game industry after the crash. So.
Oh, yes. That's undisputable. That's a fact. Nintendo, brought the game industry back.
Yeah. And without Nintendo, like, there would be no NES. Most of these games probably wouldn't exist. There probably might not even be a video game industry, or so it wouldn't be as big as it is today.
Yeah, so I mean, just a little pot shot at you people who are diehard Sony and Microsoft fans. Yeah, just remember, you wouldn't have your consoles today if it wasn't for this thing. Yeah,
I mean, and also keep in mind too, like even if these consoles, even if say eventually Microsoft did come out with a Xbox or some whatever the name would be for this mysterious console, you wouldn't have the 10 or 15 or 20 years worth of experience on these consoles that they have now. like they'll still be making these same mistakes today that they were making back in 1991.
Yes, so, you have Nintendo largely to thank. So anytime I see a video, a blog article or a magazine article saying that Nintendo's fucked, I just laugh. I'm just like, alright, yeah.
Yeah.
They're doomed, I see.
I'm sure Nintendo can find ways to make themselves money. Now, whether it means that they go from like what Sony did, where they went from or that's not Sony, Sega, where Sega went from a developer and console producer into more so a publisher, game developer role, I don't know. But I think Nintendo will be around for a while longer.
I certainly think so. I mean, hell, they've got a lot of their own IPs. They've got a huge library of their own IPs to play with, which is more than they can say for the other guys. Yeah,
I mean, just the fact that you not to mention too, like compared to, Sega's mascot is Sonic, but other than that, the Genesis didn't really have a lot of games for it. Name me a character from the Sony or the Xbox that is like a memorable character that you like immediately think, hey, like, okay, I guess with Microsoft you could say Master Chief and you would think Xbox, but there isn't one like that for Sony. Whereas with Nintendo, you say Mario, you think Nintendo, you say Zelda, or you say Samus. Like, those big three right there basically just like immediately make you think of video games and Nintendo.
Yeah.
The brand recognition and like name tie-in of A to B, like, it is so synonymous right now with gamers. Like, you just can't imagine a world without a Mario or a Zelda or a Samus.
So the advice I have for you, Nintendo, is keep Miyamoto alive.
Yeah, keep him healthy, pay him well, and let him do whatever the hell he wants.
Thank you, Miyamoto, for bringing us some great titles that have spawned our love of this medium. It's a great medium, and I hope Nintendo stays around for many, many more years.
Agreed.
So, with that said, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or you want to sound off with your bit of nostalgia about the Nintendo, you can let us know in a variety of ways. Go to Facebook, and go to facebook.com/downloadable content. You can go on Twitter at DLContent, email dlcontent1@gmail.com. All the episodes can be found on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. A bunch of ways you can get a hold of us. So, yeah, let us know. We want to hear your thoughts, and if you want to be in on a future recording, let us know there too. So, that'll do it for us. I'd like to thank Doug, who he left. He took time out of his schedule at convention he's at this weekend to spend some time on this episode. We'd like to thank our live-in guest here, Ron, who is going to be getting near 40 episodes.
Yeah, I've been around for a while.
So, thank Doug and thank Ron for their input, and have a good one, everybody.